40% of the panel today. I'm also going to link up to what Ismahani said earlier on. I'm also a girl from the South who got educated in the North, but who thrived and stayed in the South. So I am very happy on that score. Now, you've spoken about the challenges. I will start this conversation with a small anecdote, a small story. Once I was in the United States, and there were some policymakers in the room, and we're talking about brain drain. Brain drain from the United States this time to the global South. And this American policymaker was saying, you know, we have no problems with Africans. They will never leave the United States. We had some issues with Indians who managed to get the conditions right and they stayed. But we are having problems with the Chinese. They're going and they're not coming back. And they don't want to come back. So what we have to tease out in terms of lesson from this is that what has China done in terms of building ecosystems that Africa is not doing still? That's the main challenge. And I think, as you say, madam, is that when you have leaders who are scientists at the helm, they can see through this. They want to build the ecosystem which will need to attract our fellow talented Africans back to African soil. And when you have leaders who are scientists, they can also look at the quality of education being imparted to our children. Is that education fit for purpose? The education I got as a child is no longer relevant for my daughter. It will certainly be irrelevant for my grandchild one day. Rote learning is out. Learning by discovering, learning by doing is on, especially in the advent of AI, where we need all the talents on board, all the data, and also regulation to some extent, but I'm not quite happy with regulation because by the time we regulate, the technology has moved on so fast that we'll not be able to do it. The second challenge, Madam Chair, is that when we look at the issues for Africa, African agriculture, I'm sorry, there are many centers across the world here, but as I stand on African soil and being an African, I will try to drive it through an African lens. Where are the women in Africa in agriculture? What I'm going to say next is not a political statement, it's a where are the for our African girls and women? Access land we have control. Food is produced mostly by small, and many of them are women. The challenges across Africa, we really have to look at it. The point I want is how do we bring our youth to agriculture? Because the still prevails in terms of agriculture is still such a sector in dollars. Speak to the people to make them entrepreneurs. We need to change that narrative. We need to make them become entrepreneurs within Africa, within the continent, through the tools of science to provide solutions.
Thank you. Thank you. So taking a cue from we need political solutions and more scientists on the ground, China, 100% score. India, 100 or 85. Africa, 0. Can we get more going back to the continent? Can we have an can we have empowerment? And can we have youth as drivers of the food systems, research, development, and innovation that we aspire to drive as Cgiar? Thank you very much for those. Let me go now to His Excellency Mohamed Biavogu, you've been big in terms of supporting science. We've had grasping now to leapfrog well, but more specific your own content. But we are speaking from a perspective. Africa is the continent that's been left behind. That's why this panel of the wise is a section of you Africans. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Lindiwe. First of all, let me thank our host, the government of Kenya, for the fantastic hospitality we have benefited from here. To thanking you, the Cgiar, for inviting me in this meeting. Yes, the bad news is that we still have challenges, and as Mayaki said now, we don't respond to the needs of our people in terms of food, enough food and nutritious food. Yes, our lands are degrading very fast, and the response is not adequate. To date, we are still using approximately 20 kilograms of fertilizer per hectare, when others are using more than 137 kilograms per hectare. Yes, climate change is giving us erratic rains, it's giving us droughts, giving us floods, and we don't have, on the ground at least, the right responses. And then our farmers' lack of access to finance, access to technology, etc. And moreover, those who are really doing the agriculture on the ground, women, they are excluded. And youths are being told the hole is still there and they don't want it. So they leave. That's the bad news. But luckily there is a good news, very good news, which is much better. There is a lot of innovation all over. I had 40 years of my life in supporting the agricultural sector, particularly in Africa. And I see the difference. My first time in Kenya was in 1983. And I can see the difference. Today, you see technology. To technology, people have access to the market. You see infrastructure. You have roads. Most Africans are very far from an accessible road to the market. But you can see the difference in Kenya, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in many countries. The number of those closer to the market are increasing. We are seeing new policies in terms of financial inclusion. We are seeing targeted financing for women. We are seeing digitalization through drones, etc., etc. And so innovation is happening. New seeds, new technologies are on the shelves. The fundamental issue today is how to move from the lab to the ground, to the land, as they say, and how to move from the land to the plate. And here, it is a matter of policy. It is a matter for our leaders to be more bolder, more practical, and more inclusive. So the farmers are courageous. They are doing it. They are trying. The researchers are bringing us a lot of technology. Innovation is going from everywhere. The young people are creating platforms. A lot of these technologies are homegrown and here. So the next step to our is let's meet the strength of the farmers.
Thank you very much. Quotable quote is LLP. From the lab to the land to the plate. That's a systems approach. That's why we're in the business of food systems transformation. As Cgiar, we aim to transform the food system and the system. Create new development. Jonathan. Some of the innovation there. Why are we failing to be climate smart? Why are we not preserving our biodiversity? The list is long. What is happening? Over to you.
Together. That discuss human means we say concept way he taught was said as at that time of science will do food production, which is true. The area of the world is still the same, the area of the same, the water body is in the carrying capacity. In fact, the water is less. Food meet our condition must science and technology. So no doubt about that. I believe actually that we must elect presidents that have science or background. I have a background in science. I have a doctorate in hydrobiology. Water bodies, wetlands, ponds, lakes, and estuaries. So I have a excellent in terms of science. But I don't believe that we have to elect presidents that are before we can do what is. I think I see we do from the little I know, probably in Africa, is that our leaders spend more time thinking about how to lead, how not how to lead, so how to or hold on to leadership than thinking about the people. Because more time thinking about how will I stay here, take over the chair. You have little time, people. If you think about it, you must think of not whether you background or you have in your country experts in all these areas that can help you. In terms of for the 5 years of Nigeria, we did very well, I can say that. Because as one of the best in the country, the present ADB president,
Dr. Adesina, who is the current president. I picked him as my agri minister. And I took over in 2010, but I brought him in 2010 and won the election. For example, at the beginning of the budget year, the first agri minister will bring to a fund to buy fertilizer. Because the fertilizer procurement was scandalous. And money out, and the fertilizer was not to farmers. Akin did not bring any fight for that, because he's an economist, but because he knows what to do. So in all areas, on being in infrastructure. If you the presidents don't work alone. The presidents work with cabinet ministers. And appoint the competent people, not appointing people just because you know them, your friends know them, or they belong to your political parties. Some of the people are appointed as ministers in my cabinet. Even when we were doing the voting, we were not even around.
You recalled them?
Portfolios. And that is how we succeeded in managing our economy. I brought in Ngozi, for example.
Wow.
So it was in Washington, so it was not there when we were voting.
Thank you.
But I know we needed such a person to manage the economy of Nigeria. Actually, was not even in the country, he was in Kenya. But I wanted him to come because he was the best I know that can manage the agriculture.
Well done, Mr. President.
Yes, we adopt technology, no doubt about that, because without science and technology, we cannot move anywhere.
So you've been redeemed. You know science. You were hiding that you are a scientist. But the first thing you need, even before the science and technology will work, is what I agreed to some extent, the political issue. The political willingness of the president to move the country forward. Yep.
That commitment must be there.
Thank you.
And when the president has that commitment in any sector, now we are talking about agriculture, he will look for the best people to manage the system for him, and he will listen to them.
Yep.
So that is critical.
Thank you. So let me package that one. We went on a round where in the voting table we said it would be better to have a scientist for a head of state. And you've come in and said you've got small science, small, which we've never heard about. I'm glad you've pronounced it. But it's big, because that's the new agenda, biodiversity. But on top of that, the president has to bring or surround themselves with the right people. And your legacy is clear. Ngozi, 100%. Akin, 100%. Their legacy lives on. Thanks to you, who knew that you needed the best brains to use their knowledge to be game changers in the country. Congratulations on that. So, we don't have much time. You have passed your exam that you know the value of science. Because this is a science conference, we've got skeptics here who say these guys just want to stay in power and prolong their time. But you have given us a live example of you got in and said, can science come here where I am and guide me? So, question now is, can you educate my audience? You've all mentioned policy making as a game changer. What is policy making? Can you demystify it? We hired you, we voted you to be our policy, but we're in this problem and you're telling us policy can be a game changer. I just want crisp, clear definition of policy making. What were you doing when you were in power? In just 1 minute each, what is policy making and what big policy game changer did you put on the ground? I've got 5 minutes to end this panel. Please don't get me fired on the job. I'm asking you about something you lived, breathed, and worked on. Can you educate my audience? What is policy making and what is the big policy game changer that we need for a time such as now. Same order, over to you, Excellency Mayanki.
No, thank you, Lindiwe. We tend to think that policy making is a rational process. You know, you have objectives, you have means of implementation, monitoring and evaluation, feedback, etc. That's what is taught in business schools and public administration school. But policy making is not a rational process. It is part rational, but it is part negotiations, power relationships. And that's where the political priority comes in. For policy making to respond to the needs of a population in order to reduce vulnerability, to increase sovereignty, science in that case needs to be a political priority.
Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Excellency. Oh no, I'll go to same order. Dr. Amina Girib Fakim, Excellency.
Policy of all policies, especially in Africa, is to provide for the youth, to make sure that the youth doesn't become a bane, but a boon. And through the youth, we can build Africa, we can build Africa's food sovereignty. And through the youth, we can make them more entrepreneur, so that they can become job creators and not just job seekers.
Excellent. Excellency Biavogu.
Yes. Policy must be contextualized, meaning that policy making must always be evidence-based, and evidence comes from science. And then it should be inclusive. You cannot bring a solution to someone without his participation in designing that solution. So, to be simple, policy making is to be bold in using evidence-based facts, science, and inclusiveness to bring solutions that people are waiting for.
Are you saying I should forget everything Gogo Mayembe, my grandmother, taught me?
I said inclusive. Therefore,
thank you.
is your response.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Excellency. Good luck, Jonathan.
Thank you. The issue of policy, you look at it from two ways. For a policy to be successful, there are two things to it. The policy itself must be a good one, and must be the one that people will see the benefits associated with it. And there must be a total commitment from the leadership of that country, right from the president down, to make sure the policy succeeds. A number of policies that we make while in offices that are just in the files, and nobody really push it. Because we're talking about food systems, so I'll mention two in Nigeria. We had a policy of what we call the cassava bread. We wanted to reduce the wheat importation and substitute it with a percentage like 10 to 20% of cassava flour. We had another policy to make sure that young people embrace agriculture. Because like in Africa, most of our food are produced by the smallholders. And the smallholders farmers are very aged that live in the rural areas and so on. And that was not attractive to young people. How do we make sure young people embrace agriculture? And it's the young people that can adopt technology easily, not the old people. It's the young people that can use the smartphone, that can access information all over the world, that can use fertilizer or other inputs. So we have to encourage them. And we did that very well. I personally was involved in a number of meetings with the young people, not just my Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you. I'm stopping you there because you are on a good note, young people, and there is a lot of them here. Lots of tweetable tweets there. Policy making has to be rational, it's messy, it's not logical. I always call it, it's like sausage making. If you are an animal scientist and a farmer and a butcher like me, you never eat a sausage when you see when it's being made. That's how policies are. It's got to be contextualized, it's got to be evidence-based, informed by science. Those affected must participate in developing those policies. But most important, there must be commitment from the leadership to ensure implementation of the policies. However, for a time such as now, the billboard we want to leave as a panel of the wise is that it should provide for the youth, because it's the youth who should be empowered to be job creators, who will lead the technologies, take us from 40 kilograms of fertilizer to 150. But we, the over 60s, can't do it anymore. So, billboard, panel of the wise says, the youth are the future for your continent. Science must be at the forefront. We need leaders who respect science and use the innovations, create the conducive policy environment that promotes the uptake of these technologies but follows through by providing finances for implementation but review of the policies. Let me end by just thanking our panel of the wise and saying they will be with us. You have the wisdom. Follow them through and hold them accountable. They're still very powerful. Thank you very much.
Let's have another round of applause for the panelists, the Council of the Wise. And to Professor Lindiwe, very, very good moderation. Well done, Lindiwe. Our next panel is entitled Innovations and Partnerships. I'd like to call on stage Dr. Manuel Otero. He's the Director General of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture. I'd like to call upon Surita Sandosham. She's President and CEO of Cgiar International. Professor Wendy